Good afternoon, everybody. This is Nate Hare with Directed IRA, and welcome to another Directed IRA weekly webinar. Yes, we are dedicated to bringing you guys weekly education for free to expand on what we love here at Directed IRA is investors taking control of their retirement plans by using self-directed IRAs to invest in all sorts of crazy, wild things that most people don't realize you can invest in with a self-directed IRA, including real estate. And specifically, what we're going to be talking about today is loans secured by real estate. Now, this is a piggyback off of a webinar that we did just a few weeks ago, which was our private lending webinar. And we got such great feedback on that webinar, but there was a common question from everybody that I saw come in the chats, which was, how do I get into my first deal? Where do I find my borrowers? If I want to invest passively into real estate as the lender, how do I structure it and how do I vet these borrowers? Now, the difficult thing for us at Directed IRA, which most of you know, is we don't pitch investments or tell people how to structure their deals. So the good thing about these educational programs is we can bring on investment experts that can and tell you a little bit more about how they're using self-directed IRAs to help scale their real estate business and how your retirement plan may be able to participate in those investments. So we're going to cover some basics here because I do know we have a lot of people that join the program for the very first time. Hello, first-time viewers. If you guys are a first-time attender or first-time viewer, why don't you type a 1 into the chat? We like to see how many people it's their first time and welcome you. If it's your third or fourth or 500th, put that number in there as well. We also appreciate the repeat viewers who are coming to get this consistent education from Directed IRA. As a quick reminder, we've got 2 ways that you can communicate on the Zoom. If you want to ask questions specifically to me or our moderator, Ashley, who's one of my IRA account executives, she'll be answering questions in the Q&A box. So if you want to ask a question of us or Brant Phillips, once we bring our guest on, type those questions into the Q&A box. Don't put questions in the chat because we probably won't see it. But the chat is for networking. We want this to be a community thing as well. We want you guys to network with each other. If you're a real estate investor that's got deals, that's where you chat with people. You know, I'm so-and-so in Oklahoma and I'm doing this. If anybody's in the area, reach out to me. With self-directed IRA investing, you got to have some relationships and a community. So use the chat for the community aspect of it, but use the Q&A box to ask specific questions to myself, to Ashley, or our guest, Brant Phillips, once we bring him on. So let's just cover some nuts and bolts really quick, and I've got some announcements that I want to go over. If you have been following Directed IRA for at least a year, you realize that we do like to spend a lot of time giving educational opportunities to our clients and non-clients alike. We have 2 big events that we do every year. One is our Self-Directed IRA Summit, which I'll talk about here in a second. But the other event that we host is our Alternative Asset Investor Summit. Now, this is our biggest event of the year. It is our live event. Okay, this is the one live event that we're going to do this year. And it's going to be in October 22nd, 23rd in Costa Mesa, California. If you're interested in more information, you can go to altassetsummit.com, but I'll kind of give you a preview of what this event is all about. It's an event where if you're looking to learn more about alternative investments and how people are investing in alternatives, this is the one time of the year that we bring on 10 to 15 high-level speakers that are in the alternative asset space and a good mix of them that will come and provide some education to the audience on how their alternative assets work. Everything from investing in multifamily, angel investing, cryptocurrency, precious metals, oil and gas, mineral rights, private lending, short-term, mid-term rentals. If you're interested in all about just expanding your mindset on what is available to you as an investor, whether it's inside or outside of your IRA, there's no better event on the planet than the Alternative Asset Investor Summit. Now, there is no deal pitching here, so you're not going to sit there in the audience and get sold investments. That's not the purpose of this event. This event is just the the platform where we bring on different speakers to educate people about alternative investments, because a lot of us just don't get the education of how these investments work unless we go to events like this. So Directed IRA has been the host of the Alternative Asset Summit. So if you guys are interested in attending live, it's also a great way to network with investors. So your network is equal to your net worth. I believe in that. So mark your calendars, October 22nd, 23rd, Costa Mesa, California. More information to follow on that event. But the next event that we have coming right around the corner next month is our Self-Directed IRA Summit. Now, in the past, we've done this event live, and we've switched locations. We did it in Austin, Texas. We did one in North Carolina. We decided to switch it up a little bit this year and do it virtually. We wanted to capture a bigger net, or send out a bigger net, and give more opportunities to people to watch the Self-Directed IRA Summit from the comfort of their home. So we're doing the Self-Directed IRA Summit completely virtual, and that's going to be April 17th. Now, this event is a little bit different. This is less about alternative investments specifically, but it's tailor focused on how self-direction works. Everything from A to Z that you need to know about investing in alternative assets with a retirement plan, you're going to find it here at the Self-Directed IRA Summit. This is a full day crash course on everything self-direction, and you're going to have the most influential and educational people in the industry. You're going to have Matt Sorensen, our CEO, the author of the best-selling book, The Self-Directed IRA Handbook, sold over 50,000 copies. He's our principal and founder. He's also a tax attorney. You're also going to hear from Mark J. Kohler, our other founder. A lot of you guys know Mark. You're going to hear from myself. You're going to hear from a lot of speakers, but this is tailor-made to just teach you about how self-direction works and how you can maximize tax efficiency by investing in alternatives. If you want to save $50, you can even use my personal promo code. So tickets are on sale now, but if you want to save an extra $50, just go to sdirasummit.com, or you can scan that QR code. You don't need to watch it live. You'll also get the recordings. But if you are a client, you do get free access. So just shoot us an email or give us a call. We'll give you that client code. So all clients get free access. But if you want to just participate and you're not a client, that's okay. Use my code NATE50 to save you $50 on that. So we're really excited about that. Mark your calendars. Get the ticket. Even if you don't plan on being there, get the recording and watch it at your leisure. So April 17th, don't forget about that. And that's really it for announcements. And we're going to jump into kind of the meat and potatoes of the webinar today, which is a little bit, it's private lending, but we're going to talk about the first deal blueprint of private lending. How do you structure your first deal? And I'm talking about this because I learned this myself, and I had to learn it the hard way. I actually like to lend money out of my retirement accounts as a lender. So the beautiful part about that for me is I work a very busy schedule. I travel a lot, I speak a lot, but I love real estate as an underlying asset. So for me, it's hard for me to go out and find my own real estate deals and negotiate with sellers with my schedule. And truth be told, of the 25,000 clients we have, 95% of our clients work 9-to-5 jobs. They're not full-time investors, but they just like the opportunity of investing in alternatives. And a lot of those alternatives end up being real estate. And they end up investing in real estate through their retirement accounts passively, whether they're investing in a debt fund or a multifamily syndication, or just doing what I do, just private money loans to real estate investors, private money loans to real estate flippers, and let those borrowers of my retirement funds pay my IRA interest, which is completely tax-free. So it's less work on my end. I'm also helping a local real estate investor clean up our neighborhoods by taking an eyesore out of the neighborhood and turn it into a pretty property. But I also get above average return completely tax-free because I'm not loaning my money, Nate Hare, from his bank account that's taxable. I'm loaning money out of my Roth IRA or my health savings account or any of the 6 accounts that we have here at Directed IRA that are completely exempt from taxes. And that's the beautiful part about the subject matter that we're going to talk about today. So if you're not familiar with this being an option, join the club. Most people don't realize that you can invest in things outside of the stock market inside of your retirement plan. Ever since the mid-70s, when IRAs were created, we're talking about individual retirement accounts, your IRA, your rollover IRA, your Roth IRA, your SEP IRA, even your 401k at that old job you had, even your health savings account that you had at that job or you got right now. Those accounts can invest in pretty much anything on the planet except life insurance contracts and collectibles. The tax code is very lenient to us when it comes to assets held inside of a retirement plan. Okay? Now, most people are just familiar with having a retirement plan at a Fidelity or a Charles Schwab. Okay? When you have a retirement account with those companies, just realize they're also in the business to sell investments. Okay? They make commissions, they make broker fees. So if you have your retirement account with them, it's not a bad thing, but they're only going to hold what they sell, which are called your traditional investments: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, CDs, REITs. That is just one asset class amongst many asset classes you can invest in inside of a retirement plan. So when you look at the tax code, there's only two investments that aren't allowed in a retirement plan: life insurance contracts and collectibles. So as a general rule of thumb, if you can drop a purchase contract to buy something, your retirement account can be the buyer. If you can hold title to an investment, your IRA can hold the title to that, including investments like investment real estate, rental properties, fix and flips, precious metals, cryptocurrency, not a crypto ETF. Talking about your IRA can own Bitcoin, your IRA can own Ethereum or Ripple. Investments into private businesses, energy, natural resources, mineral rights, oil and gas, tax lien certificates. Your IRA can own promissory notes, which is what we're going to talk about today. Passive investments in real estate that generate interest-free, tax-free interest income. We're going to talk about that today. But these are all the investments that we see our 25,000 clients make. And just so you know, you can have as many IRAs as you want. So most of our clients that are investing in these alternatives through their IRA, they don't have to shut down their Fidelity account or close their Charles Schwab account. They just open another IRA with us here at Directed IRA. And the thing that makes us different than Fidelity and Charles Schwab is we don't sell investments. You have to tell us what the investment's going to be, but we're not going to sell it to you. So that's both good and bad. If you open an IRA here and move some money over, it's going to sit there until you tell us what to invest it in. But at the same time, since we're not telling you or selling you an investment, our account agreement says invest in anything you want, just tell us what the investment is. So you always have to work through a custodian. So we're basically an alternative to a Fidelity or Charles Schwab. We do the same thing. We're a licensed IRA custodian that's able to hold assets inside of our clients' retirement accounts. And when we do that, the spectrum widens because we don't tell you what to invest in. So you can invest in all the alternative investments and more that we showed you there. Now, what types of plans can you self-direct? What types of plans do we have here at Directed IRA that can own real estate or that can own cryptocurrency or that can make loans to a real estate investor? These are the 6 that we have here at Directed IRA. Now, we call them self-directed IRAs, but don't let that term confuse you. Self-directed is just a marketing term. It has no legal meaning behind it. Because if you notice there, the 6 accounts that we have are no different than the plans you have at Fidelity or even at your local bank. We have traditional IRAs that can be self-directed and own alternatives. We have Roth IRAs that can own alternatives. If you're self-employed, you can self-direct your own SEP IRA or a solo 401k for people who are small business owners with no employees. These are great tools to use in your alternative investment strategies. We even have non-retirement accounts that can be self-directed, which would be your self-directed health savings account or in accounts that you can set up for your kids or your grandkids that can be invested in alternatives but you can use the money to pay for their qualified education expenses with tax-free dollars. Think of it like a 529 plan, but you can invest in alts. And that would be your Coverdell Education Savings Account. So these 6 accounts here, very important. When you look at these accounts, your relationship to these plans when you set this plan up is you're the fiduciary to these plans. Okay? Your job is to put some money in it as a contribution or put some money in it by transferring some money from one of your other IRAs or other HSAs. Tell your custodian what to buy and sell, but you get your benefit when you start taking the distributions from the plan. But the good thing about these plans is these plans are not subject to tax. So if we talk about lending specifically, if I lend money to a real estate investor out of my bank account, okay, that's my personal money, I'm a taxpayer. When that borrower pays me back, I have to report that interest income as ordinary income, which means I have to pay taxes on it. The beautiful thing about me when I loan money out of my Roth IRA or I loan money out of my HSA is the borrower pays back directed IRA, and that's considered profit to my account, and those accounts don't pay tax. So if I'm really looking to invest in real estate but maximize the amount of money that I get in from the returns, I don't want to pay taxes on the returns. So these are beautiful vehicles that you all should be using, I would say, if you want to get Uncle Sam off your back and invest a bucket of money into real estate and really essentially create your own revenue stream in retirement that's not taxed. I'll give you an example. I have a client in Houston, Texas, that has 8 notes owned in her self-directed Roth. And these are pretty sizable notes, but she's had the Roth for 5 years. And this is why I love the Roth IRA, for example. The Roth IRA, once you've had a Roth for 5 years and you're above the age of 59 and a half, that Roth never pays taxes and you never pay taxes on the distribution for the rest of your life. So what she's been able to do is she's been able to invest in alternatives. She invests in a little bit of real estate. She invests into some private money loans to some real estate investor friends of hers. But all of the investments are made out of her self-directed Roth. That way, when borrowers of these notes pay her Roth, that's not taxed. And now that she's 59 and a half, she just gets to take tax-free distributions of that income and not pay a tax either. Because once you have qualified distributions, 5 years and 59 and a half, you never have to pay tax on that Roth ever again for the rest of your life. And when you die, that Roth passes to your heirs as an inherited Roth, and they get to take tax-free distributions for another 10 years. So for her, it wasn't about working longer or working harder. It was about just investing smarter, investing through an account that's not taxed, and investing in what I call cash flowing tangible investments that can pay her in retirement and her not be taxed. So this is the beautiful part about what we provide here at Directed IRA is the vehicle to just provide tax-free wealth and tax-free income in retirement or even before through the HSA and ESA through these vehicles that we call self-directed accounts. So those are the 6 types of accounts that we have here: traditional Roth, SEP, 401k, HSA, and ESA. I will challenge anybody on watching this to prove to me you only need one account. I kind of say that jokingly, but honestly, these accounts all work differently and they provide different types of tax shelter. There's nobody on this planet that can prove to me that they only need one. So if you want to set up a call with myself or one of our IRA account executives to dive in deeper on how these plans work from a tax perspective, I've got a little slide at the end here where you can schedule a call, or just go to directedira.com, schedule a call with our IRA account executives, and they can explain to you how the plans work. But we're going to get off into how the investments work here next. So I'm going to talk about one deal that I've done, and I've done some lending deals, but this is a deal that I wanted to show for some conceptual purposes before we kick it off to Brant here and talk about, lending out of a self-directed retirement plan. Right? How does it work? How is it structured? A lot of people feel like they have to have a bunch of experience to invest through a self-directed IRA because, true, it is an entrepreneurial type of account. You do have to find your own investment. But that doesn't mean you have to go find it and knock on the door of the seller and negotiate the terms. Sometimes you just need to find the person that has the deal flow for the investments. And if you have those types of relationships, you can invest through your self-directed IRA with them passively and do it more tax consciously and do less work. So this is a deal that I did in Houston, Texas, and this really comes down to networking. So one of the things with self-directed IRAs is you want to get out there and meet people. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a relationship business. Real estate's a relationship business. Self-directed IRA investing is a relationship business. So this was just a guy that used to come to my classes in Houston, Texas, small-time real estate investor. But he came up to me after the class and he said, "Hey, Nate, I just got this hot deal and I wanted to know if you wanted to be my private lender." And I said, "Sure, send me the deal. What do you got?" So he told me the backstory real quick. And I always love the story behind the deal because any salesperson knows facts tell, emotions sell. So I like the emotional aspect of this deal. But long story short is he found this deal. It was a property that was abandoned for 2 years, kind of near where he lived, and nobody knew who owned it. And it was non-HOA community, so it just kind of sat there looking ugly. The grass was as tall as the roof. I'll tell you, that's how bad of a shape this house was in. So this investor ended up locating the owner who didn't even know he owned the property. So the owner was the grandson of the original owner. So grandfather died, left the property through his estate to his grandson. His grandson had moved away when grandpa got ill and died. And the grandson didn't even know that this property was left to him. So that's why it was in the condition that it was in. So my investor friend, I guess we'll call him, tracked down the grandson and basically struck up a pretty good deal because the grandson didn't even know he owned the property. The grandson also was in need of money quick. So based on that, this investor was walking into money on the deal based on what he was buying it at. But he also knew what he could fix this property up for and ultimately sell it. So there was a lot of perceived profit on this deal. Now, the problem that the investor faced is that his conventional bank wouldn't lend on this property because they didn't like the condition of the property. And that's oftentimes what you'll find when you're buying ugly houses. Conventional banks don't want to touch them. So you're forced to go to hard money lenders. Hard money lenders are great, but hard money lenders are also not cheap. So right in the middle between conventional lenders and hard money lenders is this whole opportunity called private lenders. Private lenders consist of people, and private lenders consist of retirement accounts. So this investor approached me and said, "Hey, would I be his private lender? Would my IRAs be his private lender?" So I looked at the deal. He sent me the appraisal. He already had title open. He just needed some money to buy it and rehab it. So he sent me the deal. I looked at it. He gave me his comps. He comped it out at 215. I sent it to another real estate investor friend who comped it out at 237. So for me, why is that important? Because this investor only needed 100 grand. So for me, at the end of the day, if something happens with this borrower and I do this right, and we'll talk about how you do it right here in a second, my $100,000 is going to be tied to a property worth $215,000. So am I scared to do this deal? No. Am I scared that this borrower won't pay me? No, not really, because at the end of the day, my money is secured by an underlying asset. So for me, I like that versus a stock. I don't get that type of security or collateral when I buy stock. So for me, I like to do these types of deals. Now, I never want the house, but it's good to know that at the end of the day, the house is there in case something goes wrong with the borrower. So from this point on, and this is where the self-direction part comes into, is me as my IRA's fiduciary, I get to negotiate the terms with the investor or the borrower. So for him, it was a no-brainer that he was willing to pay above average interest to my retirement accounts. So we negotiated terms with my IRAs being the lender and him being the borrower, that he was willing to pay 2 points up front, which is just upfront interest, and 12% for a loan for 1 year. Now, how we structured it, we did it as we'll just call it an 18-month loan, okay? So why do I do short-term loans? Well, for me, I like short-term loans because I like to loan to flippers. Again, this is just my personal preference. I like to loan to flippers who have the intention of either selling the property or refinancing my IRA's loan with conventional financing, because that just works better for both parties. Because I'm not going to charge the interest rates that conventional banks charge, but I'm also not going to charge as much as hard money lenders. So there's an advantage for him to borrow private money when conventional banks won't lend him any money. It's cheaper for him. It's also faster for him, because to get money deployed out of my retirement account through directed IRA takes 3 business days. So he needed the money quick. So for him, the cost of doing business was well worth it, which was paying my IRA's 12% in 2 points. So how we structured the deal, and we'll get more into this once we got Brant on, but I'll just tell you, the one document that you need to provide your self-directed IRA company in order to deploy funds out of your retirement account to a borrower is just called a promissory note. You can have your attorney draft this, you can have the title company draft it, but it's just a promissory note. It's the borrower's promise to pay. And on the promissory note, you're going to have right at the top, who's the lender. Okay. In this case, it's not Bank of America. It's not Wells Fargo. It's going to read the vesting that I have for my retirement account. So in this case, I used 2 accounts. I used my self-directed Roth and I used my self-directed health savings account. Now, this does not make it 2 different loans. This does not make it 2 different liens. In fact, in the state of Texas, this is just called a fractionalized mortgage. It's 1 mortgage with 2 lenders. I've done 1 mortgage with 14 lenders once. That was a nightmare. But this one was just 2. And I put in, of the $100,000, $75,000 came from my Roth and $25,000 came from my HSA. Those numbers are important because when you partner different accounts together on one loan, you got to remember that the interest income that comes back from the borrower is just split amongst the accounts pro rata to how much each account put in. So why do I use my Roth and my HSA? Because the distributions are different. My Roth IRA, I maximize my distributions after I'm 59 and a half, okay? Now, Lindsay Mercino might tell you that I'm 59 and a half, but I am not 59 and a half yet, okay? Now, this is why I use my self-directed health savings account, because my HSA, if people understand how an HSA works, I don't have to wait until 59 and a half to take income out of my HSA out tax-free and penalty-free. I can take the money out of my HSA anytime I want to buy glasses, do dental work, pay for prescriptions, my co-pays, get massages, acupuncture, prescriptions. All of those things that most people pay with the money in their back pocket, I pay tax-free for the interest income from my health savings account. So those 2 accounts work differently for me. One's an account for later, one's an account for today. So if you think about that concept, you can start thinking about how many different accounts can you partner with that can all be sharing in the interest income from a borrower secured by real estate. So long story short, we funded this deal in 3 days. He bought the property. He was going to sell it, but he ended up just keeping it as a rental because by the time that he fixed it up after a year, Houston was hot back then, and this area was actually really desired for in the investor market. So he just decided to keep it as a rental. He still has it as a rental today. And after he owned it a year, what he did is he just went back to his conventional bank, the one that wouldn't give him a loan to buy it, and said, hey, here's the property now. Look how nice it is. And he refinanced my loan with new conventional financing. So it brought his interest rate from the one I was charging 12 down to 6, got my retirement accounts paid back fully, and then I just invested in his next deal. So I'm not only making double-digit returns, I'm compounding on double-digit returns by doing short-term loans. So that's just why I like to do short-term loans, but I'll extend loans too if borrowers are paying on time. Now, key points to remember on this, and then I'm going to bring Brant in. Key points to remember is you cannot loan money out of your retirement account to yourself. So that's one of the main no-nos when it comes to retirement account investments. is the IRS does not want us borrowing money from our own retirement account. Okay, outside of a 401k, that's different. But I can't make a loan from my Roth to Nate Hare and then go buy real estate as Nate Hare. I have to invest with what we call non-disqualified people. Okay, so that's one of the things that we'll talk about today. But I just want to share that kind of case study before we bring on Brant to kind of show how he, and this is, I got to share these numbers, Brant. So, and maybe you can verify for me. I've known you since 2014, I think, maybe back when we were
Roughly, yeah,
a lot younger. Okay.
much younger.
And there, I think there was a point, correct me if I'm wrong. There was a point in your career, I think, that you had bought all of your real estate with self-directed IRA lenders.
A vast majority of my private lenders' capital was from self-directed IRAs. Well above, it was in the 70 to 80% range back then. Right now,
Wow.
it's around 60, 65%.
And up to this date, you've borrowed and paid 10,000 mortgages. About half of those are from self-directed IRA lenders.
Yeah, more than half, and we just stopped counting at 10,000. My assistant ran some numbers. I'm like,
Yeah.
10,000, that's a good number. We can use that
Yeah.
one.
So if there's anybody that I can think of on this planet to share from the borrower's perspective, how this works and how deals should be structured is Brant. So he also is the author of the Private Lender Playbook, which we'll talk about here in a second, which is a great book, which he actually allowed me to be the co-author of that. And, I've got a couple questions, and I know you're going to share kind of your first deal
Yep.
blueprint, because going back to last program is, there's a lot of people saying, I want to do this, but I don't know where to get started. I even had people coming into me and saying, who should I loan to? I just can't tell you that. You got to
Yeah.
tell us who to loan to, but it's just not something that's familiar to people because they've just have never done it.
Yeah.
So you got started in real estate what year?
2007.
2007. And I think it
Jan-
started as a part-time gig, right? It wasn't full-time. It was just a side hustle.
Yeah, that's correct. I was still working a full-time job. I previously was 7 years in law enforcement and decided to get out of that and go into the corporate world and couldn't stand it from day one. But I hung in there. But after a couple of years, like, man, this just is not for me. Began investing after about 2 or 3 years in the corporate world. And then started part time, right, side hustle, investing for a little over 2 years before I went full time.
And then at what point did you fall on this concept of using private money from retirement accounts? How did that come about?
So very fortuitous conversation. The background was my first year in real estate, and this was in 2007, completely different real estate market than it is now. I was doing what you just mentioned, right, with your case study. I was borrowing with a hard money lender. Okay, I had a good hard money lender contact who became a friend. I would borrow on that to buy, distressed property, and then I would immediately take it to the bank and refinance it as soon as I got a tenant in it. And it was very easy to do. Well, then 2008 came, and I had already had maxed out my Fannie Mae loans. I couldn't get any more bank loans after I had 10 rentals. So I didn't know anything about private money, but I knew the concept of partnerships. So my second year in real estate, I put together a few small partnerships, and I basically spearheaded finding the deals, renovating them, all the paperwork, the management, you name it. And I did about 10 more deals in 2008. And that was great. There were 50-50 partnerships with my investors, and they were happy and I was happy. But it was in January of 2009. A good friend of mine, a good friend of both of ours, shared with me this. It was a private lender, I'm sorry, a private investor magazine. I'm sorry, a real estate investor magazine. I'm getting my words crossed. And then on that I didn't even know this magazine existed. And on the cover of it was a real estate investor who was raising a lot of money through private lenders. I didn't know anything about this. I didn't know it existed. So I kind of went on that rabbit hole of like, man, this could be so much better for my business and potentially for my lenders. So that's later that year, a few months later, I raised money from my first private lender, and kind of the rest of the story, I've been doing this now
Yeah.
for 18 years, and my private lenders have been absolutely. I would not be in business today if it weren't for my private lending relationships.
Yeah, and I think what most people, a lot of people don't realize is just how much money is in retirement accounts and how often you run into that conversation because 70% of every person walking in the country has some sort of retirement plan. They
Yes.
just don't know that they can use it to invest the way that we invest them here at Directed IRA. I had Chat GPT run some numbers for me, so this is shocking. Of of all the hard money loans that were funded in 2025, they total US 120 billion. Okay.
Hard money.
Hard money, just hard money.
Hmm.
Okay. Retirement accounts, sitting in retirement accounts, $45 trillion. So if you're looking to use a bucket of money, which bucket should you be looking at? If you're not looking at retirement accounts, you're missing the vastly bigger bucket,
Yeah.
370x on top of 120
Yeah.
billion. And this is not throwing shade on hard money lenders at all. The best real estate investors I know, they know all the avenues to generate some capital from. And there's
Yeah.
oftentimes, I would say, hard money makes sense, conventional money makes sense, private money makes sense. So I think we'll probably discuss a little bit about that. So
Yeah.
you want to go ahead and pull up your slides and go ahead
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
and again, as a reminder, if you guys have any questions for myself or for Brant, type those into the Q&A box, and Ashley will relay those to us. And Ashley, feel free to stop us at any time if you feel the question is pertinent to what we're going over, or we can just do it at the Q&A at the end. Take it away.
All right. Cool. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All good. Good. Audio's good. Great. All right. So appreciate it, Nate. So yeah. So we're going to talk about the first deal blueprint, because the first deal is incredibly important. I mean, they're all important, but depending on how that first deal goes is going to help you dictate how the rest, it lays a foundation for the rest of your lending, investment career, if you, so to speak. And what I found is kind of what Nate just touched on. Whenever I heard, this is going back 15, 16 years ago, about how much money was just sitting idle in self-directed IRA accounts, I was like, man, we got to get the word out. And that's one of the things that led me to first write the private lender playbook. We'll talk a little bit later about the second editions getting released next month. But going to that, Nate, I'll tell you one of the conversations isn't part of my slides, but when I put together my partnerships in 2008, one of my first partners had pulled a pretty substantial amount of money out of the stock market to invest with me in buying some rental property. And later in 2009, uh, end of 2009, I had done a few deals with private lenders, not a lot. I was still using my hard money lender, but I had a couple of private lenders I was working with. But I'll be honest, like as a real estate investor, I still had this mindset of being a beggar, being a borrower. I felt a little bit uncomfortable about talking to private lenders about, investing with me. And because I'm not one to be salesy, and things like that. And even though in the corporate world I was in a sales position, but my thing was always just educate and help. And if I can help them, great. If not, that's okay. But this conversation I had with that private lender at the end of 2009 kind of changed my view on everything. And it was an aha moment for me, because what she said was just really hit me hard. And what it was this: we were talking, and she said we were talking about a couple of the rentals, just general conversation. And then we are getting off the call, and I'll never forget this. And it was kind of like, oh, by the way, we're wrapping up the call, and she's like, Brant, oh, by the way, I wanted to say thank you, because I was looking at my accounts, and if I had left my money in the stock market when it went before, when it crashed, like it would have devastated me. So I just want to thank you, for inviting me in this opportunity. And that light bulb went off for me, because I've been like all in on real estate, and I believe wholeheartedly on the benefits of real estate investing when done wisely, when done sustainably. There's, you got to be careful on who you're lending to. But I believed wholeheartedly in my business model, if you will, which is focused on affordable housing. So after that, it gave me not it gave me more confidence, but also like, you know what, I'm looking at this the wrong way because there are so many people out there with money sitting idle in self-directed IRA accounts, not being deployed, not earning interest. And in today's day and age with inflation and all these things, there's so much opportunity to invest wisely with real estate and with real estate investors, that just why wouldn't they do it? And what I ultimately, found, like, as you know, like people don't typically move forward because of a lack of experience and a lack of education, right? So that's when I just started saying, you know what, I'm not gonna worry about raising money, but I am gonna focus on educating people about private mortgage lending, and that was my whole, mo, was like if I educate people enough about this, I know hopefully, if you would, be interested in investing with me, and if not with me, with somebody else. So that was kind of the framework of the private lender playbook. And a few, I don't like, you know, the slides. This is my credibility slide, not to brag, boast, or anything, or impress anybody, but really just show you kind of what is possible out there with investing. So when I did start, I'll be honest, like I was like, my wife and I were pretty much broke. All right. We were broke, living in an apartment. I was somewhat financially illiterate at the time. I went to college. I had a degree. I was in law enforcement, but I didn't pursue financial education. But when I went to that corporate job, I'm like, man, there's got to be something, there's got to be something more out there. So I went into real estate with the dream and the vision of creating a better life for me and my family, creating wealth, and I wanted to leave the rat race and leave my job. I had no idea on the journey it was going to take me on, and I really got into enjoyed speaking, teaching, educating. So since that time, I've written some books. I've built a few different successful companies. But through all of this, like Nate said, since I started from essentially ground zero, we've done hundreds of properties, from single family flips, rentals. We've moved into buying mobile home parks, RV parks. We've done land syndications, small multifamily. We're working on a commercial deal right now. And 70, 80%, well, initial acquisitions, Nate, like 95% of all my initial acquisitions are from private lenders, and a majority of that being self-directed IRA lenders. And what I'm most proud of, this is like, but like what I brag a little bit, but it's more to show proof of concept, is that starting from where I started at, I've maintained a 100% track record of loan performance, those 10,000 plus mortgages we've paid. And it's really more so just proof of concept, right? Like if you are investing wisely, and if you're lending wisely, which means understanding how to find the right borrowers, vet those borrowers and analyze them, then there is a blueprint out there on how to do this the right way. And that's what I'm going to share on this. So I'm not here to raise money, not to do anything like that. This is my disclaimer is this is educational, informational only. So I'm not trying to give financial, legal, tax advice. And anything you take from this information is like you're going to do that at your own risk. So just got to get that out of the way. Um, so now let's focus on the meat here. Okay. So let's talk about your first deal, because I know there's probably more than a few people watching this live or recording, and you've got that money sitting, and it's a problem, but you also know, like, hey, I don't know what to do. So we're going to kind of walk you through some of those first steps. So I do think that your first deal is going to help set your future standards. Okay. If you go into this and you do it the wrong way, just like investors come in, if their first flip doesn't go the right way, they create a story like, well, this doesn't work. Well, that's not true. I can tell you from doing hundreds of deals. So the same thing with private lending. Your first deal is going to set your future standards. So it's really important to spend time getting properly educated, properly equipped, and building your team, so to speak. And understand that, you're not just lending money. you're underwriting risk because there's risk in everything. So just like a bank has its own underwriting guidelines before they approve a loan, you're going to act as a bank, and you're going to be able to create your underwriting standards any way you seek. Okay. With your first deal, and I'll probably mention this a few times on this, I would encourage you with your first deal is not, the goal is not maximum return. Okay. Your goal is protection. Okay. Safeguarding your asset first. Like I think it was Mark Twain who said, or this is Twain or Buffett about, rule number one, what's the return of my money? Number two, what's the return on my money? Right now, we're looking for security and making sure that you safeguard yourself. So we're not chasing yield or returns just yet. We want to build something that's sustainable for you. So in the beginning, asset protection is always going to be first priority, but it's much more important on the first deal than a return on investment. We're looking for the safety, the security, and understanding what you're doing and who you're doing it with, which we'll touch on in just a second. So let's understand what you're actually doing. So private mortgage lending, at least in the terms of this presentation, pretty much anything you'll hear me talk about with private lending, it's going to be asset based with a focus on real estate. I only do real estate. That's all I do. So I'm only going to talk about real estate. Contractual protection, making sure that you have the right legal documents. All the legal instruments are set up properly to safeguard you. Okay, and understanding what you're doing here is you're managing risk versus return. Yeah, and what you're not doing. Okay, you're not a partner. Sometimes I'll use that word loosely. My private lender partners, they're lenders. Okay, they're lenders. We might use that word loosely, but you're not a silent partner. Okay, you're acting essentially as a bank. You're not a charity. You're not looking to help somebody out. Okay. You're not going to take a gamble. You're not going to take a risk. Some investors are gambling with their business. You don't want to be a part of that. Okay. And you're not acting as a friend. Okay. You're looking this as a bank. Okay. And so I put this on here. Think like a bank, just don't act like one. Because banks, we do not enjoy working with banks. Okay. I work with a lot of banks on refinances, commercial loans, things like that. And it is one of the most painful experiences that me and my team deal with. Just some of the headaches. Now, our lenders, on the other hand, now they are, most of them, like, really enjoyable to work with. Like, most of my lenders are friends, and it's a pleasant experience because we're helping them, we're serving them. So just think like you're thinking like a bank. You're not going to short sell yourself on any of the legal protections. So I want to make that clear that we're not saying like it's easier to work the private lender because there's less paperwork or anything like that. That's not the case. It's just more enjoyable to help a private lender help them grow their self-directed IRA than to help a bank out. So one of the most important things is learning how to analyze the borrower. Okay. So for your first deal, the borrower is much more important than the property. The property matters. We're going to talk about it in a second. But right now, you're really looking for a borrower with experience. Have they done this before? Is this their first time? I will tell you a really bad formula. A really bad formula is an inexperienced borrower and an inexperienced lender. That is not a good scenario. So in the beginning, if you are inexperienced as a lender, I would encourage you to look for a borrower that is very experienced, very experienced. Okay. What is their track record? What is their proof? HUD statements, like how many deals have they done? Do they have references from banks, from other private lenders, from other people in the industry? So this is going to be your job to vet them out a little bit. Okay. What is their character? What's their communication? What do I mean by that? So I am a private lender now. So about 10 years ago or so, I began lending money as well, much like Nate. So I invest a lot of my money as a private lender to other investors. Essentially, I'm a hard money lender to newbies because I'm experienced, but they're inexperienced. So I will lend my money at a much higher rate, right, than I can borrow at. But some particular borrowers, I'm looking at their character, I'm not sure about that. And I'm looking at their communication. Some people are very clear on what their business plan is, what their agenda is, what their game plan is, their business model, and things like that. So you want to look and make sure that everything is cohesive, everything flows, everything kind of like checks out when you're looking at their character and their communication and their deal, their business model, and things like that. Looking at their financial strength. What's their liquidity? Do they have cash in the bank? Do they have good credit? Things like that. I will tell you that there's a lot of real estate investors that they're not that strong. Like their financials aren't that strong. Maybe they're like me, they're first getting started, things like that. It's not, maybe I've always had great credit, but I wasn't always, I didn't have a lot of liquidity at times. So these are things that you need to look at. And I would say probably overanalyze a little bit in the beginning and as you're getting your feet wet. And then finding out what type of reputation they have in the community, in the investment community, in the real estate community. How do you do that? You're going to ask around, you're going to talk to people. Um, Nowadays, with Google and social media, I would encourage you strongly when you're looking at a potential borrower, check out their sort of social media profiles, go online, do Google searches and things like that. There's a lot of data out there that you can find. There's even, some people, I know of a couple of investors who shamefully have not done well with their investors, and this is public information. One of which I saw the other day, doing an event raising money, and there's a class action lawsuit against this individual out there. So do some digging, ask around, and make sure that you are doing your proper underwriting to analyze this person. And then looking at the borrower, like what's the leverage position that they're looking for on a particular loan, particular deal. And then you kind of weigh all these factors, right? So we're like essentially like there's a pie and we're weighing these factors. What's their experience? What's their track record? What's their liquidity? What's their references? So you're kind of, what's the story of this borrower? So right here, I said you're underwriting the dude, not the deal. Okay, you're underwriting the dude, not the deal, or the dudette, so to speak, as a female. But this is like you're really taking a close look at this person, even though you're not their partner, you're just a lender, but you want to feel good about who you're loaning money to. Okay, I think it's very, very important.
Can I add to that real quick,
Yeah,
Brant? So
absolutely.
I don't see a whole lot of lending deals go bad because if you do it securely and you close at a title company or through an attorney, at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot that can go wrong. But every time I see a loan go wrong, it's the lender did very little to no due diligence on the borrower.
Yeah.
They just talked to the borrower sold them, but a simple Google search, 30 seconds would have showed them that that person has a class action lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like it's like intensive due diligence, but you need to do a little bit of due diligence before you deploy your money, out to a borrower. And on the flip side, I would say, because you struck something in me is, yeah, there's a bad recipe when it's an inexperienced lender and an inexperienced borrower. So I would
Yes.
just say for the first time lenders, and this is coming from my own experience too, is that when I first got into doing private money loans, even though I had a banking background, I still felt like I was new because I had never done a private money loan with my own money or my retirement account. So for me, I wanted to have somebody that was way more experienced than me. So, but with that, I knew that I was also going to get experience along the way, call it free coaching, I guess you would say,
Mm-hmm.
by
Mm-hmm.
being a passive investor in a successful real estate investor's venture. So for me, it was low risk to start. So when I have a low risk borrower because they're experienced and they've got deal flow and they got a scalable business and I have almost no way to lose, I charge a low interest rate on that because I just wanted
Mm-hmm.
to get my foot in the door. And I think that's one
Yes.
thing investors miss because they just have this one interest rate in their head that they got. No, you're evaluating your interest rate based on how risky the loan is. That's how banks do it, right?
Yeah.
So if it's a low risk loan and you're trying to get your foot in the door, you don't have to charge maximum rate or wait for those home run deals. because you'll get there. And at this point, now I can be a little bit more selective and I can get the rate that I want. But I'm also still, I'm not trying to gouge the borrower because a successful loan has a successful investor on the other end. You got to find a win-win. So even with, your rate being determined on the investor's experience, you also want to have an interest rate from the lender side that's going to allow your borrower to perform. You don't want to make them go broke because you're charging them the highest interest rate you want to get, because that ultimately just makes your loan potentially in default because the borrower can't perform because you
Yeah,
charged them too high of an interest rate.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so I'm not trying to scare anybody with my slides too much, but I do a little bit, right? Like it's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I do like to scare people a little bit when I'm educating to let them know that, hey, there are these pitfalls, but I've got, you know, 10,000 mortgages and there's a million other guys like me who are doing business the right way. And it's not that hard to analyze them. And that is something that you do need to really really take your time to make sure that you feel good and comfortable with that person you're investing with. How is their character and things like that, and then we combine that also with the deal. Okay, we're going to combine that with the deal. There's some lenders that, they may just say, hey, I've been taught, like, if it's a good deal, the numbers work and all that kind of stuff, the borrower doesn't matter. My lenders would tell you differently. They would say the borrower is, because here's the thing, you could have the greatest deal in the world, but a good deal can go sideways. And if you have someone of high in character, high tech integrity, track record, even if the deal goes bad, they're still going to find a way to perform. I just did a presentation earlier today. We're talking about like shifting markets and things like that. And the pros learn how to pivot. They have multiple exit strategies. They have ways to be sustainable. An amateur, someone of not high character, they could just walk away. And if you do this the right way, which I'm going to tell you how to do, that will be okay too, because like in Nate's case study, you're gonna put yourself in a position to profit even if the deal goes quote unquote bad. But you do need to spend time analyzing that person and then moving into analyzing the deal, which we're going to talk about now. And then I'll also say that this is something I like to say when I'm giving this talking about private lending, is this: you can typically tell the experience of the borrower by what they pay for their money. So I'll say that again. You can typically tell the experience of the borrower by what they pay for their money. So when I first began in investing, right, so I was paying very, very high because I was inexperienced. So I was willing to pay high rates, high points, high fees, all that kind of stuff to my private lender. But as my experience increased, my cost of capital went down. Why? Because I was able to raise private money from other people who were happier with a lower rate of return, kind of investing in that middle space between banks and the hard money, which Nate hit on earlier. And I would say also, if we take that, you can tell the experience of the borrower about what they pay for their money. You can also tell typically the experience of the lender by what they charge for their money. So in the beginning, it's kind of like riding a bike with training wheels. I encourage you, like, be okay with a little bit of less return for the safety, quote unquote safety. I use that word loosely, but the track record and experience of that borrower. But as your experience increases, your education experience increases, then you can seek higher rates of returns and things like that. And that's what, Nate and I essentially do when we're lending our money. But so we first looked at the deal. I'm sorry, the dude. Now we're going to look at the deal. So your first deal, I would say ultra conservative underwriting, right? We always want to be conservative with our underwriting, but I would like just a little bit more so. So you're looking at the ARV, which is the after repaired value, supported by verified comps, meaning are you just going to take the investor's word for it or get some comps, get some data to verify the value of that property? Very easy to do. What is your loan to value? So a rule out in the investing arena is 75% loan to value is a max, but lower equals safer and better. A lot of investors will say 70% or lower, whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay, if an investor is focused on median price housing and below, like let's say for example, I'm in the Houston market, so our average flip deal is around. It used to be 150,000. Nowadays, it's 250 to 300,000 ARV. So if we're all in that deal for 75% loan to value, that means there's 25% equity there. The equity represents oxygen. It represents like, hey, we've got longer days on the market. The market has slowed down, things like that. There's equity. If we went over on a rehab budget. So that's how we analyze a deal as well as an investor. So that would be the max on like median price housing, but you're encouraged to go lower, like 70%, 65%. You get to set that lending criteria any way that you see it. Another thing is a clear exit strategy on the property. Okay. I've met with investors. This goes back to the communication piece, and they're looking at a deal, and some newbie investors, I can tell right away when they're new, and I can also tell that they're not clear on their business model. So they'll say, hey, I'm looking at this deal, and we'll start talking. I'm like, what are you going to do with it? I'm like, I don't know. I'm thinking about flipping it, maybe renting it. What do you think about Airbnbs and things like this? And I'm like, that is communication that's not clear. So with an investor, I want to make sure they have a clear exit strategy, but I also want to know if they've given any consideration to multiple exit strategies, because after, flipping several hundred homes over the years, I'll tell you that some of our flips have flopped, right? They didn't sell. We didn't get the price that we wanted, or they're sitting days on the market. I've been through market cycles. I've been through oil busts. I've been through hurricanes. And sometimes that deal didn't do what we intended it to do. But as I say, pros pivot, right? So we always have multiple exit strategies, and that's why I focus on affordable housing, because we can flip them, we could rent them, we could wholesale them and discount them to another investor. We can do Airbnb, we can do a pad split. I'm sitting in one of our pad split properties right now because I was out and about before a meeting. So you want to find out if they have a clear exit strategy, and then what's preferable is they have a plan B just in case. Okay. And are they realistic about their timelines? Okay. So most of my deals with private lenders are typically like, let's say we're flipping a property or we're going to buy it as a rental. We set those up for 12-month loan terms. Okay. We set those up for 12-month loan terms. In the past, I used to do 6-month loan terms. Well, what happens in 6 months? Like, a lot can happen. There's unforeseen things. There's changes in the market, changes in interest rates. Like I mentioned, I've been through hurricanes. So I try to under promise, over deliver type of thing. So we always set up our loans for, like, if we're doing a flip, for example, for 12 months, even though I know there's a good chance we could be out of that loan, paid off, paying our lender back in 4 to 6 months. I know that is what is realistic, but I try to set my lender up for 12 months. And when you will kind of sense this with newbie investors, like they're super bullish, right? They're super excited, like, man, I'm going to be in and out of this thing in 2 months or 3 months. I'm like tapping the brakes a little bit to say, like, okay, let me hear, like, what is their thought process? Where are they getting this from? Because I'm looking at data of what's going on in the market. I'm like, let's be realistic here. And as a lender perspective, I don't want to paint a borrower into a corner, right? Like, I want to turn my money, just like Nate mentioned, and I'll do extensions. But if they are not realistic about their timelines, like they're over super aggressive, I'm going to probably tap the brakes a little bit there.
Yeah, and I would say from the lender too. I don't want to put my borrower in a position where they're under the gun and I put too short of a time frame on them and they're still working on the property.
Yeah.
I want to give some wiggle room so that they can perform. So that's why I usually do 12. Sometimes I'll even do 18 months, because the other flip side of it too is sometimes the worst thing about lending private money is you get paid off too early. and then you got to wait for another deal.
Hmm.
So I at least want my money locked up for at least a year. So there's those two factors. A, I don't want to put
Yeah.
my borrower in a position where they feel like they've got to pay me off early before they're done with the property. But also, I don't want to be sitting on the sidelines at the same time trying to wait for another deal.
Yes, yes, and that timeline too as a lender is really important. Knowing, like, let's say for example, if you say, hey, you're committing to like a 12-month loan, but you know you're going to need this capital. You're going to need this capital in a little after a year. Like, there's a possibility. I wouldn't say good chance. There's a possibility something goes wrong that that investor needs to extend that loan out. I recently had a lender who committed to a longer term loan, and it's been about 6 months, and they came back and said, hey, I need to get this capital back. We're getting their capital back. We're working through that, but it was like a little unexpected and unfortunate, kind of what this person's going through. So just make sure that you want to build some buffer into your timelines. um, the budget accuracy, like really getting into like their construction costs and things like that. This is one of those things too that's going to come from experience, but now with the internet, and more specifically like AI and chat GPT and things like that, we want to make sure that is their budget realistic. Okay. We can look at some formulas and things like that. I won't get into this here, but cost per square foot, and looking, this is this, like, say for example, a $50,000 budget realistic. I get people who've sent me budgets and they're saying, hey, this property's going to be a $50,000 rehab. I'm like, that's like $100,000 rehab, like, pretty easily. And then when you're doing your underwriting, you're analyzing this deal, you're looking at your comps, you're looking at data, you're looking at the exit strategy. You got to ask yourself this question: if I had to own this property, how would I feel? Okay. So once again, going back to Nate's case study, he was like, I would feel great. Or
Yeah.
I would feel great if I took this property
It,
back, you
it's
know?
so important. That's actually my rule number one is loan on something you'd be excited to own. Because
Hmm.
at the end of the day,
Hmm.
worst case scenario is you were going to own that property in your retirement
Yep.
account. But is it a property that you're confident that you can deal with it if that happens? So I'm confident I know what to do with a 3 bedroom, 2 bath rental in Texas, for example.
Hmm.
That's my wheelhouse. But
Yep.
I've been approached to invest in larger deals and some commercial deals, and I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it. Like I wouldn't know what to do with it if I had to
Yeah.
take it back. So
Yeah.
again, like first thing first is yes, who's the borrower, but also would you be excited to own the underlying asset if it
Yes.
came to that?
Yes. Absolutely. It's really important. Build your team. So you're doing this, your first deal. You don't want to fly solo. All right. We don't need any lone wolves out there. Okay. You should never do your first deal alone. You need to build your team. A real estate attorney, title company, an insurance agent who understands from a lender's perspective for your protection, a CPA, or reaching out to directed IRA, your self-directed IRA partner to go through some of those tax strategies for your particular situation. Talking to other investors, other lenders who've been there before, who've done this before. So talk to somebody in all these areas that when you have a question, when you have a concern, something doesn't look right, you just need someone to look over your shoulder, that you have these people to call. And this is a very easy team to put together. Uh, Directed RA can help you with this. People in your local community can help you with this. You can build a team very quickly, attending some networking events, certain webinars. But your first deal should feel supervised. Okay,
100%.
you're not going through this alone. You do have a team. You're going to make the ultimate decisions, but you're essentially getting coaching and mentoring, guiding you through there. And for the most part, this is free. Like, honestly, like your borrower is going to be paying for your coaching, right? Because they're going to be paying for any, loan documents and things like that. There's title companies going to be charging their fees, and a title company is a great resource. A title company is a great resource. So, for example, a real estate attorney who I've been working with for 15 years now is actually retiring, um, but when he prepares our loan documents for our lenders, he is representing them as the lender, not me as the borrower. I'm still paying for those documents, but legally he is representing them. So that means they are also his clients. So they can call him, ask questions, do a consulting session, whatever, what have you. And also title companies. Once again, the title companies are closing that transaction. We, as the borrower, are paying for those fees, but title companies typically have a fee attorney, closing coordinators, and all those people that can help walk them through the steps. And it doesn't cost anything. So make sure that you have this team and these people that you can call to guide you through that.
Let me stop real quick and just ask if we have any questions. Ashley, do we have any questions for myself or for Brant?
Yes, we do. We've gotten a couple questions about minimum loan amounts and doing micro lending with 10K or less, or even just 500 bucks, or just a couple hundred bucks and what that would look like.
So uh, many years ago, I began buying mobile home parks and RV parks. And so we did find a space where it made sense to do some loans in the ten to $25,000 range, but those are rare, and I would all like it's not the same security as buying real estate because these are like considered personal property, and they were going in our parks and RV parks and mobile home parks. But we've done deals with that with lenders, and we've maintained all of our track record with lenders. But I would be very guarded on that. It's really hard, number one, to find any real estate for that. There are some exceptions to that. There are small tracts of land that investors buy for 10, 20, $30,000 in certain rural areas and things like that. But in terms of buying real estate that meets our criteria in terms of the safety and security of being a piece of real estate with a first lien that has property insurance, title insurance, it's hard to find deals like that out there. There's subordinate liens, there's second liens, there's some other ways that you can invest, and maybe Nate wants to speak a little bit more on it.
Yeah,
But
I,
it's
I
more
actually did it.
creative stuff.
Yeah, you gotta lean on your network if you want to use a small amount of money on one of your first deals or any deal really. I actually did a $500 loan one time, but it wasn't just my money that was being lent. It was 8 other people that I brought into a deal that I found. And the story is I had my money deployed. That deal that I showed you before, my money was deployed in that one and another one. So I had another deal come across my plate like a week later. And I did it for fun because I wanted to just kind of test the concept. But long story short, is a $55,000 loan. I had $500 just sitting in my Roth uninvested. So I made a $50 contribution, just so 550 is 1% of 55,000. That's how I did that math. And then I literally just went to the people that I worked with at the time and just said, hey, I got a great deal from this borrower. There's a lot of equity in it. Do you guys have any money sitting on the sidelines in your retirement accounts? And within an hour, I had 8 different accounts from 3 different people, an HSA, 2 ESAs that somebody had set up for their daughters, and 2 Roth IRAs. And I used my network to bring in the majority of the money to loan $55,000 to this borrower. Now, how I structured a little differently is since nobody was disqualified to me, I actually negotiated with the borrower and made it sure it was okay with all the other lenders that my small Roth investment of 550 bucks got the 2 points on the entire deal, plus the
Hmm.
12% that we
Yes.
got from the borrower. So yeah, I can only do that because I only have one account in there, but that there are some different ways you can be creative with a small amount of money, but it usually takes leverage from other people that have more money to come in on the deal with you.
Yes. And I know you've got some other presentations that get all into that.
Yeah,
It's a little bit more complex for this, but
right.
there definitely are opportunities. There
Yeah.
definitely are.
Any other questions,
Okay.
Ashley? That was a good question.
Yeah. Brandon asks, is there a universal or standard rate for lending based on amount, time, risk, etc.?
So my response to that is that there is, okay, but it's not a numeric. Did I lose my screen? It like
No,
flipped away. Okay, cool.
we can see
So
you. Yeah.
the rate is we're both the it's a happy rate. Okay, where both sides are happy. Um, so you're looking, like Nate touched on, you're looking for that win-win deal. I want, when I'm doing a loan with my private lenders, I want them to feel happy, right? Like they're winning. This is good. This is fair. And I want to feel the same way, because if we don't feel that way, it's not a good deal. And that's the whole Stephen Covey, win-win or no deal. And so when I started raising private money, I used to put out an interest rate like this is what we're doing, this is what we're borrowing at, and things like that. But then as I started talking to other private lenders, some certain private lenders saying, hey, I'd like to get my money to work. Like you're busy, and I haven't got a deal going. Like I'd be very happy if you could, borrow my money and I'll, pay me 7%. I was like, well, that sounds great. If they're happy with it, why wouldn't I borrow money at a lower rate of return? So my rule, it's built off that premise, like win-win or no deal. In private lending, it's like an open marketplace. Okay, and so a couple of things I'll share on that I think is real important is my job. Okay, so my job, and this is a conversation I have with my private lenders and through the educational process, right, is like my job as a real estate investor and entrepreneur, running an investment company. So I've got employees, I've got a spouse, I have children, I have two dogs, and my daughter just brought home a dog, and now we kind of have three dogs. So I have a lot of financial responsibilities. And my job is to raise money at the lowest cost of capital that I can, right? And I understand conversely that my private lenders, they want to get the highest rate of return that they can while there's still safety there, right? So there's this dichotomy that we got to figure out. So that's the way I always go about, raising capital, is like, what rate of return would you be happy with? And I'll share a story with you. There was one particular lender that invested with us, and I met with them, and me and my partner, I had a business partner in a particular partnership, and we were raising money, and we were meeting with investors, and it was an open-ended question, right? So we would go through a presentation. Here's who we are. Here's our business model, et cetera, et cetera. But we didn't talk about a rate of return. We left that kind of open-ended. So we went through the whole presentation and said, that's it, no sales pitch. You have any questions? She said, yeah, like I want to do it, but what, you haven't mentioned a rate of return. He said, well, it kind of depends on what rate of return you'd be happy with. And then if you're investing short term, long term, it kind of fluctuates. And she said, you know what? I've got a lot of money sitting in a CD that's earning not even 1% back in the day. This is going back a while. She's like, I'd be really happy with 5%. So that was really a win-win deal because she was extremely happy and we were happy. So we borrowed money at 5%, because if we had pitched or promoted 10, 12, 14% or something like that, she probably would have thought that she couldn't trust it. So it wouldn't be believable. So I go into it with that frame, but I will tell you on average, we're borrowing somewhere around 8 to 10%. On most of our single family deals, it's in the 8 to 10% range. About half of the deals we'll pay a point to, half we won't. But it also depends, like I said, and Nate has said, on the experience of the lender. So that's what I see, Nate. I don't know about
Yeah.
you, but it's in that range.
No, it's right in there. I mean, generally, private money, the rates sit between conventional and hard money, right?
Yeah.
Because there's pros and cons to all of it. So if conventional money is 6 to 7% and hard money's 14 to 18, well, then private money sits right smack dab in the middle at 8 to 12. And that's usually what I see. Now you can fluctuate between that 8 and 12, and you can even go below or go a little higher depending on the deal. But the vast majority of private lending deals that I see are right between 8 and 12%.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of the sweet spot.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Well, we're running a little long on time. So
All right.
let's start.
All
Yeah.
right, let me wrap this up. So your first deal was going to kind of touch on some things that we've mentioned. Lower leverage. Okay, you're looking for a borrower with lower leverage. You want uh, look to see, do they have some skin in the game? Is this a high equity deal, a low equity deal, a shorter term? So I'm saying 12 months, 6 months at like, don't paint yourself into a corner, but you also don't want to get stuck into something that's 3, 4, 5 years, 10 years. I've got some private loans out for 10 years. Let's go for a shorter term.
Hey,
Let's go
Brent,
for a,
can you share your, or Brent, can you share your screen? I think you
oh, did
stopped
it?
sharing.
Yeah,
Yep,
that's it. That's what I
it's okay.
thought. It was, went away from there for a second. Okay,
There you
boom,
go.
there we go. All right, shorter term, you're looking for a stronger borrower in the beginning, a cleaner property. What I mean by that, paint, carpet type of rehab in and out is different than, rehabbing a 100-year home. You want cleaner, easier properties for investors to get in and out of. We want to make sure that this investor does have a pivot plan to have multiple exit strategies if needed. And for your first deal, once again, you don't need a home run. You just need a clean base hit. Okay, that's the playbook. What I see new lenders get wrong, that they're chasing that a high rate instead of more safety, trusting too quickly. Like Ronald Reagan said, we're going to trust but verify. You don't want to skip over document review. I know nobody likes reviewing legal documents and things like that. Utilize your team to make sure you understand what you need to understand. Funding too much or too many on for the first deal. What do I mean by that? So someone comes in, they learn about this information, they get excited, and they'll go 2, 3, or 4 loans right away out of the gate. Let's start a little bit slow. Okay, let's start low. Don't lend also based on the relationship alone. Okay, we're going to look at the borrower, but we're also going to give equal, if not greater weight to the deal. Some of these investors are really good at raising capital and they can talk. They're really good smooth talkers, but let's make sure it's not just based on that relationship, because if that goes bad, you've still got the safety of the deal, and your confidence in your lending is going to come from that structure, the structure of the deal, the equity, all those components in your sound underwriting. Okay, so I'll go real quick. So what do you, and we'll share with how to get some more information. So your protection is in first position. You're securing yourself with the proper loan documents, a title commitment, insurance policy, reviewing the closing statement, wire verification. I won't get too much into that, but there's a lot of fraud and stuff going on.
Oh
So you
yeah.
want to be super, super cautious with that. You're only dealing with the title company. You're not you're only dealing with the title company on that. So just safeguard yourself and protection. Like your speed is slow. Okay, in the beginning, like slow, over ask. There's no dumb questions, and you just make sure that you're protected. So do you want me to run through this case study? It's going to be
No, I think if people want more information, I know they know where to reach you, and you do have a couple things that they can participate
yeah.
on live or virtually. So, if you guys are interested in learning more or surrounding yourself in a room full of lenders and borrowers, Brant's done a phenomenal job of having his own educational platform where, like he said, he's just teaching this to people. He's not looking for anything in return. But he's put out, his book, The Private Lender Playbook, which I'll let him talk about. But he's also doing a lot of live events in Houston, Texas. I'm going to be at the next one he's got coming up. He's also got a lot of virtual education as well. So it doesn't stop here. This is just the lead in for you guys to get some more education on how this works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do a weekly live event. They people, if they're in Houston, can attend in person or virtually. Like I mentioned earlier, super excited about this. The Private Lender Playbook second edition is being released April 30th, and we've got a big event lined up for that. If anyone wants to get signed up for that, I guess this is the only sales pitch I'll make here. Is would love for y'all to come out and hang out in person if you're going to be in the Houston area. We're going to do a big kickoff event for the book launch, food, drinks, some guest speakers, things like that. And anyone who signs up to for the event will get a copy of the book. So whether you attend in person or you attend remotely, we'll make sure you get a copy, early release edition of the book, and if you can't attend the event in person, we'll have a recording there. But you know, after April 30th, it will be on Amazon and Audible and things like that. But super excited about it, and not to pitch the book. I mean, we typically give the book away free digitally. So if you know it's a book for free, hit me up after April 30th when it's released. Because the book's not about generating income; it's about educating people how to do it the right way. That's when I wrote this years and years and years ago, because I heard, not a lot, but I did hear stories of people who did it the wrong way. And I mean, my schedule, Nate. So back in the day, I was like, I'm just going to take some time, write a book, share this information because I believe wholeheartedly in it. And so that's what we did. We wrote a book, and it just kind of goes much more in depth than what we covered today. And the more that you're educated, the more experience you get, like you're just building a foundation. And like I said, I know lenders who've been doing this for 5, 10, 15 years now. They've been investing with investors like myself. They've never had a deal go wrong. It's not that it can't happen. It's just because they had some basic knowledge, some basic investing principles when it comes to lending, and they've executed it wisely. So I encourage everyone who's thinking about doing this, like, don't let this be your last education that you partake in. Like, get more experience. Matt Sordeson's book as well is another great book to check out, and just get your education, and then get off the bench and like get in the game and get out there, because there's so many deals happening.
It's an easy read, and it comes off the back of a lot of sweat equity that Brant put in personally on his investments and his career. I mean, we're talking thousands of homes, 10,000 mortgages borrowed and paid. So he knows both sides of the game from the borrower's perspective and the lender's perspective, because he's worked with over 10,000 lenders at this point, 5,000 of them being from self-directed IRA investors. So I highly encourage you to check it out. Again, the book release April 30th. If you can make it to the event, I'll be there as well. Angel, if you could pull my slide up real quick. I just have one slide, and then we'll take any last minute questions. But if you guys are interested in setting up your self-directed IRAs and you haven't done so, you can use our code Private Lender for this webinar. Private Lender saves you $150 off any application, any account you set up, whether that's a self-directed traditional, a self-directed Roth, self-directed 401k, an HSA or an ESA. Again, I think people need multiple accounts if you're really trying to maximize the tax advantages when you're investing in alternatives or doing private money loans. You should have multiple accounts, but you save $150 off each account if you use the code Private Lender. Scan that QR code or go to directedira.com. Ashley, do we have any other final questions that we can wrap it up on? And again, I want to thank you, Brant. It was so good, such good material, real basic and easy for people to understand. And I hope people got some value out of it.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Brant. No questions. I think we're good.
Okay, awesome.
All right, guys.
How do people reach out to you, Brant? Any way they can get a hold of you, or where should they go to just soak up more Brant Phillips information if they can't make it to the event?
Just Google Brant Phillips. I'm out there. You'll find me.
Okay. Well, thanks, Brant. We appreciate it. We appreciate you guys. We look forward to seeing you at the next Directed IRA webinar next Tuesday. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, guys.